in family law software, and I'm showing you the cloud version here, the desktop version is exactly the same, except instead of the menus down the side, each of these titles are tabs along the top, but substantively the program is exactly the same. So we're going to start with entering the information because, of course, garbage in, garbage out. If you want accurate support computations, you need to have accurate information entered. You can enter information in family law software in any order. We're going to be focusing on the support maintenance data section today, but it's all interrelated. So if you enter information in income and expense, such as the monthly information income for Taylor, we have 0. So let's do $120 a week, or we can do an hourly wage, which will give us the minimum wage. But let's say she doesn't work 40 hours, she only works 20. That will automatically calculate the amount of income. When I go back to the support maintenance data and I open up the wages section, you will see that information appears there because it is the same field. So anywhere that information would appear, it's already filled in. Okay. Now on our child support maintenance data pages, we actually have 3 pages: quick, complete, and graphs. Now the quick is intended for simple cases. Maybe you're doing a consultation, you want to give a quick idea of what child support might be. This is going to be very minimal information. You put in the children, the overnights. Here we've got it all going to Taylor. Let's say that 210 overnights are Taylor's and 155 are Blake's. As you know, that puts us in the shared parenting arena for the support calculation. If I have anything more than the children with the overnights and the wages, health insurance, and maintenance, if there's any other data to enter, I need to go to the complete page. I tend to work in the complete page anyway, even if I think it's a simple case, because this reminds me of all the pieces of the calculation that would go into your support result. Graphs is just going to be the information that we've put in graphed so that you can see the income shift, where we went from Taylor having a very small amount, Blake having a large amount of annual income, to now Taylor and Blake after the support and maintenance calculations. So when there's several other graphs here that we can look at. I'm going to go back to the complete page now, and this page is going to allow us to see all the pieces for your calculation. So I'm going to stay in this page for the rest of this part of the presentation. We're going to look. We already have entered the parties' names. We can enter them here if I haven't already entered them, but you will have to enter the names when you open a file, so that should be there. You can put in a case number, which will then appear on the maintenance guideline printout. The next set of options here is to use the 2021 statute or the old 2017 guidelines. And then we can also select to use the new information. As of July 1, 2023, there were some statutory changes. So we can click on the help note button, the little question mark in the blue circle, and that will tell us what those choices mean and what we do for them. So that is for the 2021 statute, and the 2023 change really has to do with the maintenance and the tax adjustment for maintenance. So it's now 1.33 if the monthly income is more than $10,000. and we're talking about the same parties. Okay. The next set of checkbox have to do with the taxability of spousal maintenance. As I'm sure we all know, since January 1, 2019, any new orders of spousal maintenance are non-taxable, non-deductible for state and federal purposes. So this by default is going to be checked. If you are doing a modification of a prior award that was taxable, you can uncheck those boxes to make it taxable maintenance. All right, now let's look at the children's section. The important thing here is you don't have to put in the kids' names. You can just put kid 1, kid 2, whatever, or leave it blank. If you're going to be filling out forms with it, it's nice to have the kids' names in there or doing printouts because clients kind of like it when we know their children's names, or we at least can look them up. We ask for the birth date or birth year is the next column. So if you only put in the year, it will assume January 1 of the current year. If you don't put in any birth date, it will assume January 1 of the current year. And if you only put in the year, it will assume January 1 of that year. And the birth date itself isn't important except for a few reasons, like looking at step downs, or if you're looking at tax consequences and net income for other purposes, and that the deduction or the tax credit for a 17-year-old is different, or an 18-year-old is different than for a 16-year-old. So we ask for that information. Again, not terribly important for your regular support calculation. Custody for guideline. This is an interesting provision. What we're really asking for here has to do with taxes and who's going to be the recipient parent of the support, unless the income suggests otherwise. So custody for guideline means who has the majority parenting time. Even if you have substantially equal parenting time, because there are an odd number of days in most years, and because of IRS rules, one parent has to be the majority time parent. We actually in Colorado have a rule that assigns that to the lower earning parent. Should there be a tie, the IRS actually does it the other way. So you want to make sure you give the lower earning parent the extra overnight if you can, so that they get the tax benefits that the higher earning parent may be phased out of. The next column is for tax exemption. This, of course, is going to affect net income, not necessarily child support in Colorado. However, you do want to fill that out, even though the tax exemption is currently worth 0. The IRS attaches to whoever gets the tax exemption the child tax credit. So that's important. The custody for guideline or majority time parent has to do with other tax benefits like the earned income tax credit or filing statuses ahead of household are the most common ones there. So those are important to fill out. The next column is for child eligible age. That is going to automatically appear as checked when the child is younger than 18. So if I were to change this to 2007, let's say, it's going to automatically, I guess I should make it 05, 03. It's going to take away the eligible age automatically because it knows that 2003 is older than 18. And when I put it back to 2010, the child eligible age gets rechecked. The next column is for child of this relationship. And that the program is going to assume any children you put in are children of the relationship. If you add, as we have here, we've added a third child to this family, Blake Jr., who is Blake's child, but he doesn't get the tax exemption, nor does his spouse. And I'm going to uncheck child of the relationship. And that means that the overnights are irrelevant for this child because they're not living with Blake, or not a child between Blake and Taylor in this case. And then if this is a child not of the relationship, you want to say, does the child live with the party or the child lives elsewhere? Okay. We still want to put the child, the parent, that parent Blake, as the custody for guidelines column for purposes of figuring out the credit for the support that he's paying for that child, if he is paying any. So then the next question here would be, if the child is not of the relationship and lives elsewhere, what is the monthly support that's paid not pursuant to a court order? There is another place to enter court-ordered support. It's under deductions. So I can put this in here. Let's say it's $500 a month, not pursuant to court order. And that is now going to be the credit, and it is going to change the support amount. So we can see at the top of this support maintenance data page, a running total as I make changes to this file. The amount of support, if it impacts support, would change. So right now, support is $679 a month. If I say there's $500 of not court-ordered child support, it will change the support to $670 because of that. Now, the next column we have is for overnights. And here you can put in the number of overnights with either party, and it'll automatically calculate for the other party. So if I put in for Blake 140, it automatically makes Taylor 255. If I change it to 155 again, it will go back to 210 for Taylor. So it automatically calculates the other side of that. And then I can also click this little bed icon, and that will come up with our little overnights calculator. So if you don't know the number of overnights, but you know what their schedule is, you can put it in here. So let's say there's 1 overnight every week and 3 overnights every 2 weeks. We are now up to 130 overnights for Blake, or 35.62%. So let's just increase this by 1 additional overnight. Now we're up to 182. We've got 2 and 3. So 2 overnights every week and 3 overnights every 2 weeks. We're almost at 50-50. If I take this back down, we're at the 130, but maybe there's some additional overnights every year. So if I put in another 20 overnights, it's going to give me 41% or 150 overnights. And then if I click OK, that number will then appear in, in the number of overnights for Blake. So let's just make this consistent so they both have the same number of overnights for the kids. If you have different numbers of overnights for the children, the program will average those, as long as it's the same parent. So here I've got 2 additional children. Let's say that one of them is Blake's and one of them is Taylor's. And this child lives with Taylor, so we don't need to worry about overnights, and it's automatically, I already unchecked the child of the relationship before we started this webinar. So now we have a total of 2 children, and we're going to use the shared custody Schedule B. because of the number of overnights. If we had split custody, which is each parent has majority time with at least one child, we could set that up and it will automatically calculate that as well. So if I were to change this to, let's say, 150 for Taylor with one child and 215 with Taylor for the other child, this is now split custody. That automatically got checked, and therefore we're going to use that calculation, and then we will show the sole if there's enough overnights for shared, but sole would be less. So that's automatically built into the program, all the little wrinkles and stuff that we have. I'm going to go through the rest of these sections, and then we're going to look at how you play with the numbers to accommodate all these different variables. So let's look at wages and filing status. Again, if I've already put in the wages, they will appear here. I've got Taylor with $273 a week for 20-hour week. Now, maybe she's got a second job, and I can add a wage. I can also add a wage for a second job. And let's say this is also going to be an hourly for another 10 hours a week. And this is going to be imputed by the court to Taylor because she's only working 20 hours a week and the court thinks she can work at least 30, right? So I just name the employer imputed. And then when I do my reports, like a budget report, it's going to show me Taylor's employer number 1, and then employer 2 is imputed. And then Blake's employer number 1, and I can put in the names of these employers as well. And any bonuses are listed in the budget report separately because we're going to enter them separately. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Now, the other thing that's important here for figuring out net income for non-child support purposes, the head of household status would be checked if somebody was already the custodial parent. We said Blake was custodial parent of Blake Jr., but he doesn't really live with him, so he doesn't get to be head of household. And so I'm changing manually Blake to single. Okay. And then, of course, we do have the ability to extrapolate for high incomes in cash flow projections. We are not doing that for guideline worksheet calculations because it's not accepted, an accepted methodology, but we offer it for those who want to see what a high income situation might look like. And the help note here explains that. All right, so that's wages. Now we've got wage-like income. Wage-like income is going to give us income that's not the regular W-2 or pay stub income. Now, bonuses, commissions, tips, and overtime will show up on the W-2. So if you're just entering information from a W-2, then you won't be able to enter these separately unless you subtract it out and add it here. A lot of people like to keep track of these kinds of income separately so that these tend to be more variable forms of income, and you may want to look at some options for these. Okay, we have other types of income. So wage-like income would be income that's not your basic W-2 payroll wage, and which is not income from assets. So this is other types of income, child support from previous relationship. So this will definitely not be included. And if we click on the help button, we'll see it's not included in the support guideline calculations, but it is going to be included in cash flow. And then you could mark that non-taxable. Same with spousal maintenance from a previous relationship. You have other things like workers' comp, new spouse's income that'll change taxes, but it won't count for guideline support. And then we have a bunch of blank lines. So you could put in, for example, gifts from parents. And let's say that she gets $1,000 a month from her parents, but that is non-taxable. So now it's going to change the support amount because it would be considered income for support purposes. And having that in there will, of course, impact child support. So you can put in any kinds of other income that you want to identify or specify and not just include in wages, especially if it's taxed differently. The next section is for deductions, including maintenance. So maintenance, meaning maintenance paid in this relationship and maintenance paid on prior relationships. So if we want the program to calculate maintenance, we would check the box at number 1 here. If I uncheck it, the amount of maintenance goes blank. And if we haven't already calculated the, put in the duration, that would also not be there, but we put it in before when it was automatic, so it filled it in. And the duration of maintenance is still computing and the amount is still computing in the background, but we're not using it. So think of this checkbox as 2 different functions. First is, are we going to use the calculated spousal maintenance amount? And the second is, do we want to calculate the spousal maintenance amount, or do we want to put in our own number? So if I use the calculated number, it's $45.98 a month, but maybe they've agreed to $5,000 a month. And that's the number we're going to use. So I can put in the number, and that's what the program will use. I can use the calculated number. That's what it will use. Or I can have no number because there's no maintenance in the case. And that's also the option here. I'm going to go back to using calculated maintenance for the moment. And now if there were maintenance paid on prior relationships, that would go in to number 2 as a deduction. And you can mark whether that prior relationship is or is not tax deductible. If there is support ordered that is paid. So you remember when we looked at the children's section, there was a entry for a child doesn't live with me, but I'm paying support. And you put in the amount that's for non-court ordered support. This here is for court ordered support. So I put in the $500 here, and we'll see how these flow through to the guideline worksheet. Okay. And then if there was any ordered post-secondary education, say for a prior family's children, you can put that in as well as a deduction. The next section on our screen is adjustments for child care and health insurance. This again will adjust net income and the child support amount. So if we are doing child care, we can go to the child care expense and deduction calculation worksheets. So if I go to the child care expense, I can say how much is being paid. So let's say Taylor is paying $1,200 a month for Reese. And that's the only child that we'll just keep it simple. So in this relationship, Taylor's paying for $1,200 a month. Now, when I go back, I can include that information. And then when I go to the child care deduction calculation, because we're doing net of the child care credit, the actual amount will be $1,120, not $1,200, because she will have an $80 a month child care credit. And I can click on the worksheet to see how that was calculated anytime I choose. Okay. And then the next section would be for health insurance. And this we're also going to go to a separate worksheet. There's so much information that we just find it easier to use separate worksheets for these. Just remember to click on them. So let's see insurance premiums paid by each party for each child. Often the parties don't know that. So maybe we have to put in a total for health insurance, but they should be able to get the information of how much they're paying for each child so that the credit can be calculated. And then if there's any extraordinary medical expenses over $250 a year and per month. So in this case, we're going to put in an annual number here. Maybe it is 500 of extraordinary medical expenses, which comes out to $42 a month. Are there any other extraordinary expenses for the children? I might say, well, what is that? I don't know what that is. I click on the help button and this tells me it's for monthly expenses such as transportation between homes, tuition, public school, mandatory fees. So maybe in this case, there is going to be there is going to be an expense for books and so on. Let's say it's $50 a month, okay, $300 a year. And then you can also put in any extraordinary adjustments which reduce need. And again, if I click on the help, this is like a child's trust, lottery winnings, all kinds of fun things that could change that child's needs. I've never had a child with lottery winnings in 43 years of practice, but I suppose it could happen. All right, now let's look at the next section, additional income. So we already did wages and wage-like income. Now, when we look at additional income, this is based on your statute. So reimbursements or in-kind payments. So let's say Blake has a business. He's running a bunch of personal expenses through the business. So let's add back in $1,000 a month for Blake. And you can see that it changed child support as well. Potential income. So this could be imputed income, but understand that whatever you put in here is not going to be tax affected. So if the judge says, I'm going to impute $30,000 a year to your client or to the other party, you don't really want to put it in here. It's better to put it in as wages because $30,000 isn't really $30,000. If the judge says $30,000 net, then yes, you could put it in here. And then sometimes, every once in a while, you get a case where there's some additional income that's not going to show up in another section, and you can add that here. It's sort of a catch-all. Now, there are some pieces of income to exclude sometimes, and so we have fields for that. The first is a Colorado statutory exemption, which is work beyond full-time employment. So what we've done is we've put in all of the hours, all of the time, all of the salary, whatever income. But let's say that some of it comes from overtime or above full-time employment. Maybe Taylor has 3 part-time jobs and she's working 50 or 60 hours a week. She doesn't have to work more than 40, so I can adjust her income accordingly. So I put it in so it's taxed properly, but then I'm going to take it out for guideline calculations. And then the other is any other income to exclude. And, this is sort of a catch-all as well. Sometimes you may, by agreement, say, okay, we won't count the RSU income, or we won't count the stock options or some other kind of income that you may or may not want to exclude. So it's just a nice little catch-all. You don't use it very often, but when you do need it, it's fun to have it there. Then the next section would be income from investments. So whatever income is coming from assets, you can use this table here, which will just allow you to put in the dollar amounts. A better practice would be to put in the asset and the income from the asset. That way, if I change who's getting this, I will change the support amount. So let's say that Taylor is not getting it, Blake is. It changes the support amount. If I say Taylor's getting it all, then again, it changes the support. So with putting it in this table up here, when you change who got the asset, you're not changing who's getting this income. You have to go back in and change the income as well. So I prefer to not use that table unless it's early in the case and I just don't have the information about where that money is actually coming from. But here we've got all of the assets that can be put in that might have income for related to them. And if we do have any income, it'll show there. Now we do have an option to omit investment income for child support. And if you wanted to do that, then I could take that out, child support changed, and we don't have that being included. So I'm going to put it back in, but know that that option is there. So now our last two sections are the child support to use and the spousal maintenance to use. So when we go into child support to use, scroll down, the first question is, are we going to calculate and carry support amounts? So 1A, check to use the family law software calculation for support. Okay. If I don't want to use the calculated number, I have a collaborative case or mediated case and they've come up with their own number, I can uncheck that box and put in the number that I want, or that the parties have agreed to. I can always go back and check the box. We're always calculating the support in the background. I can also choose to extrapolate for high incomes if I want to. And when I don't extrapolate, I would change the number, but not the calculated value that we're using. Okay. And then we also do step downs. So if you have split custody, we can't do step downs, but we can if we change it back to shared custody. So I could go back up, but this would give me all the drop downs. The reason why in this case it's not calculating step downs is because we're using 2 one-child families instead of 1 2-child family. So there's no step downs when there's only one child. But I can go back in and change that. Change this one to the 215. I hope if I did the 0. And now when I go back to that section that we were just looking at, child support to use and calculating the step downs, it will in fact calculate what the step down would be based on the information we have about their incomes. Obviously, if it's in the future, like here, we've got the step down happening in 2029, it's not likely their incomes are going to be exactly the same in 2029. So it's kind of useless, but it's really handy for cases where the parties' children are, one of them is going to age out very soon. So avoid having to come back to court. And then again, here, child support paid on account of prior relationships, child support, not financial support. So child support meaning court ordered. So here you see that $500 a month that we had already put in is there. And now let's look at spousal maintenance to use, the next section. And that allows us to look at, again, the same page that we were looking at before. The taxability is assumed to be non-taxable, non-deductible. You can change it if you need to. Again, should we use calculated maintenance? Two parts to that question. Should we use maintenance at all? And if so, should we use the calculated maintenance? So if you have no maintenance in the case, you uncheck this. Child support changes because now there's no maintenance, and the amount of maintenance goes blank. When I check it again, child support changes, the amount of maintenance fills in. If I uncheck it, child support changed to $30.39, but let's say I say $3,000 a month in spousal maintenance. Now child support changed because it's using, that number, the 3,000, and calculating guideline support based on that income shift. We also have here the present value for spousal maintenance. If you wanted to do a buyout, we also have that same, one-page report or worksheet under analysis, maintenance present value, which gives me the same information and also some cute graphs. Okay. Now, in the support maintenance data, again, we have a place for previous relationship spousal maintenance and whether that in fact is tax deductible and includable. So now we can look at number 6, item 6 here under spousal maintenance to use. So we have step downs, inflation adjustments, etc. And you can do the same thing as step downs with child support with maintenance. Not as common, but could be useful in a particular case. And then let's go back at the end of this section. Close that. We have some links to our what if pages and the support impact report. We also have a link to the child support worksheet and spousal maintenance worksheet, which are also here. Print guideline will give you the guideline worksheet, and it's all filled in automatically for you. And the same with your maintenance worksheet, which you can look at the income that's included in there. You can look at the maintenance calculation itself to make sure it's accurate. You've put in the data correctly. You can look at the duration worksheet and fix your header to put in the right case, title and so on. And then also in that, we're now going to look at the what ifs. So I can click on this link and it's going to take me to the what if page, Colorado child support what if, which is actually in the analysis section, support what if. So this allows you to do side-by-side scenarios, changing any of these variables that would impact support. So I can change the overnights, I can change the income, I can change the amount of maintenance, I can change all kinds of information here, I can change health insurance and so on, and see the result. Now I have 3 scenarios here. The first is titled actual. That is what's going to be related or the result of the information that you originally entered. These other scenarios don't impact what you've already entered unless you say, okay, you know what, let's use this scenario too. That's more realistic. We think Taylor's wage is going to be $40,000. So now instead of this, let's use 40,000. And I'm going to click OK. So now this last one is going to be based on her having $40,000 a year of income. And I say, that's the one I want. So I'm going to swap the actual hourly, say Taylor hourly. So I'm going to label each one, and then I can say, no, I want to use scenario 2. So I take the actual and I can swap it for scenario 2. And now it's going to literally flip those 2 columns. And now Taylor wage at 40,000 is the actual. And when I go to the guideline worksheet, that is what I'm going to see. And you can do the same for any of the variables. The support impact was the second link. This is going to show you sort of the income shift. Here we've got the income for both parties. You have, child support coming out from dad and going to mom. Spousal maintenance coming out from dad and going to mom. So now their incomes after support and maintenance are 7,205 to 10,967. And then there's taxes. So of course the maintenance is not taxed, the child support is not taxed. Taylor's only paying tax on the 4672 minus any tax credits and so on that she gets from being custodial parent. So her income after tax is 6935. His income after tax is 6987, which is a 50-50 split of the combined income. I can also go to my report options. I can include living expenses in this summary. However, as you can see here, our friend Blake didn't fill out all his affidavit, so we don't know what his living expenses are. Not likely, they're only $550 a month unless he's running everything through the business, and that's just what he has to pay himself. So we've got all of these things. Now, anytime we're in this analysis page, you can see click for expanded report on your pages, and that is going to take this short detail report and give you much more detail, all the different sources of the wage of the income, the different deductions, tax credits, and so on. And then here you've got your support amount and what that's going to look like. Okay, so here at line 20 and 21 is the child and spousal support. And then you can see net cash and so on to see how things are. Now I can do side-by-side scenarios in the support what if, and I can also go into other what if, which allows you to play with child support and the maintenance and play around with those numbers. So if you're trying to get away from guideline numbers and you want to see some other options, this is a way to play around with both child support and maintenance. There are options at the bottom of the section here. There's an options section, which allows you to say, do I want to update child support when I enter spousal maintenance? Do I want to update child support when I change exemptions, etc.? Do I want to keep child support in sync with what we put in the enter data tab, or do I want to let it flow and look at child support and maintenance? Same thing with maintenance. Okay. And again, you get all kinds of information from this. And you can see graphs and you can see spreadsheets and so on. Okay, so we have a couple of questions still in the Q&A. Oh, no, they're all fixed. Wow, we had a lot of questions. Good. All right. So the YouTube address is at, the at symbol, the A in the circle, the Family Law Software. And you can go into YouTube and search for that. You can also go on our website on the online training page where you signed up for this webinar, and you can go into on that page, previously recorded webinars will take you to our YouTube page. All right. There are there's one other type of maintenance calculation that I want to show you, which is our spousal maintenance break even. So this, I changed all the numbers here, so I'm not sure it's going to work. Yes, no spousal maintenance is necessary to enable Taylor to reach break even, because if you remember, we put in $40,000 a year of income for her. So let's go back and just take that out. We're going to take out Taylor's income. And now when I go to the analysis maintenance alternative section and I go to more, I can go to spousal maintenance break even, which is often, oh, she still has income. And I can see on my summary here what that income is compared to her expenses. And you can see that she will have enough to meet her expenses. She will have $738 left per month, per year rather, based on this. No, this is per month, even though it says it's annualized, but this is per month. So, but if we didn't have enough money, if she didn't have this $1,339 of income, we would be able to see an amount for spousal maintenance. I can go to my budget report and see what income is showing up for her. So we've got that imputed income. So let's go ahead and change that. And she's also got the S&P 500. So if we go in and change those things, let me go into support maintenance data. Here's the wages. Let's take out this one as well. And then I can go to my income from assets and take out this $9,000 a year. And now when I go to the spousal maintenance break even page, it should tell us that she needs some maintenance. Yes. So we know that to break even, she needs $886 per month. And if I scroll down, I see what that would look like if she in fact had the $886 per month. She ends up with a negative $1 per month. So essentially within rounding error, break even. But Blake has $6,709 left per month after payment of the support, the maintenance, the taxes, and his living expenses. So you might say, wait a minute, don't think that's fair. What else can we do? And so now I can go back to my support maintenance data, and I can go down to the support to use section, spousal maintenance to use, and let's see what happens if I check the box to use calculated maintenance. And now we see the number changed to $39.14, but the child support also changed because we've shifted income. So now when I look at my support impact report, which I can get to either here, either to cover needs, income after support and maintenance, that's the support impact report. We can see that she's going to have $19.91 left and he's going to have $47.17, and still not equal in any sense, but she's covered her needs, and we can look at all the other options for what that might look like. So it's sort of, you can go around and double check your numbers. You can look at different options for coming up with these amounts, especially in non-guideline cases. And if all you want to do is guidelines, we've got it all for you. So hopefully we've answered all your questions. We have a few minutes left in our designated time. If you have more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're done with just showing you how to do the child support and maintenance. But I want to show you one other thing as long as we have time. If we go into reports, more reports, we do have a report that's called the Budget Report for Children. And I believe it is report 20, yes, on the planners page right here. And on the lawyer's page, it actually is under current income, the budget report for children. And any expenses that you entered in for the children, which we don't have any in this sample file, but would show here, so that it's another way to approach non-guideline child support, is to look at what the expenses are for the children and allocate them between the parties. So sometimes that's called the children's checkbook method of coming up with a reasonable support obligation. So that is everything I wanted to show you. We have all kinds of options here in each report that you look at. There's always going to be report options. And that is our child support and maintenance webinar for Colorado. Thank you for joining us.